Hello, today is Wednesday, May 13th. It is cloudy where I am. It's pretty dreary. Um, but that doesn't mean that today is a bad day. I sometimes really like cloudy days for, I don't know, just the cozy feeling you get when you're stuck inside. You can kind of get a cup of coffee, a couple of blankets, some tea if that's your thing, and like some music in the background. Um, haven't been feeling the best today, but I'm gonna try and see if I can do. Um, excuse me. I'm gonna see if I can still do this today. So today I had a moment to stop and think of what um I want to do with this in this channel. I guess I'm calling these videos trying something new. Because I am trying something new, and maybe every single day we'll try to try something new. Um, whether that's using a new technique, using a new medium. It'll be hard to keep track of what I have and haven't done, but I mean, if you think of it, everything that you do is something new. Um, because you've never done the thing that you're doing right now before. Even if you're breathing, you're not breathing the same air. So, um, today being Wednesday, is in the middle of the art work week I'm calling. So Monday through Thursday, we're going to do some technical studies. And by technical study, um, I'm sure there's a real term for a technical study and what it is and what it means and what it should be. But for my purposes, a technical study is just practicing very fundamental skills and doing that from reference images. So today, you probably see over here, we've got Totoro. I remember we were talking about Miyazaki movies um, during the first video, and I was really going for like a Studio Ghibli-esque landscape and tree, really just the tree. So I figured it would be good to practice drawing characters. I'm not very good at drawing characters or creatures quite yet. Maybe I can get like the shape and the form down. Just something that I know that I need to practice. So that's what we're going to be practicing today. And I said in the other video that I was going to edit and maybe trim down some of the stuff in Premiere Pro. Didn't end up doing that. It was the end of the day, so I just wrapped it up, pressed stop, and then just uploaded it to YouTube. So I didn't want to have to go through that yet. But today I'm going to trim this down as much as I can, and maybe I'll trim out some of these more rambly bits here, like what I'm doing right now. Um, I ramble quite a lot. I'm a certified yapper. So yeah, back to this weekly schedule. Monday through Thursday, just technical studies, practicing skills, um, a lot of fundamentals like perspective, um, light, shade, shadow, things of that nature. Color theory, and maybe once we get to a spot where I'm more comfortable, maybe anatomy, maybe even just technical studies, studying different plants. So different species of plant, what the leaves look like, if like a sort of a cardioid shaped leaves, what kind of plants those are versus very dentate leaves, like something like on an arrowwood. And then sometimes too, you've got these plants and grasses that have very sharp lancate leaves. So that's what we're gonna do Monday through Thursday. Friday, I'm calling Master Study Friday. Uh, and by master study, I really mean I'm going to take a work of art that I really enjoy, and I'm going to try my best to copy it one to one. And maybe try and imagine what they were thinking as they were putting those lines down, and get inside the head of someone who has more experience than myself. So that could be anything from like a Ghibli background to something more traditional media like Thomas Cole. Maybe studying some traditional artists, and some of their masterpieces. So I'll be trying to copy those as close as I can and just see if I can understand what they were doing. So that's the goal of Master Study Friday. Again, I've mentioned in the past, I'm gonna try to do more traditional media again, for this channel. It's just been very easy for me to open up the computer, open up OBS, and then open up Photoshop instead of having to like make a physical painting, get the setup to record that, um, make a drawing, a sketch, take that video, download it onto the computer, put it through post processing, put it through Premiere Pro, and you know all of that stuff. You know, and this so far has just been as few steps as possible to get me started, so that I have something to look forward to, in the future. And that's the goal. Like I know that this channel right now is not influencer quality work. Maybe down the line, I'm gonna practice, making this a better experience for you all, and trying to see how entertaining I can make it. But for right now, this is just about making something, and getting started. And I mean, overcoming the first hurdle of even putting the pen down and putting my voice on the internet. So that's where I'm at with this. So again, technical studies Monday through Thursday. Friday we're gonna try and do a master study. Saturday I'm calling, original works or from imagination. So I'm not gonna have, for all of these days and maybe even on Sundays, I'll have reference images that I'm copying from. And the goal is on Saturday to see what I can draw from my imagination, just what's going on inside my noggin. There's my little pea brain, shriveled little stem. So I'm gonna see what I can draw from either from imagination, from memory, and just practice that way. So that's Saturday. Just taking time to be creative, come up with something fun on our own. Maybe making original characters. I've never made an original character. Maybe making like a stylized image. And then Sundays I'm gonna call Sunday Fun Day. Sunday Fun Day is all about having fun. What do I want to draw that day? And what would be a fun thing to draw that day? Whether it's, you know, something that's going on in the world, there's like a piece of media that I really enjoy, or whatnot. I haven't really planned out what Sunday Funday is, and that's okay. It's just a wild card day. And maybe it's a day where I just draw Magikarp like 100 times, you know? I used to draw Magikarp in school quite a lot. See if I can remember how to do it. And just kind of got those scales there. So maybe Sunday Funday is just something weird like that. That would be fun. I think this Sunday I'm gonna draw Magikarp 100 times. So let's get started today. And what I've got is a number seven, not a number seven, but a 7 pixel wide hard round pressure sized brush. I enjoyed the pencil in the other one. I've got smoothing set to 30%. How do you start drawing Totoro? Right now he's sitting on a branch. Let's get that branch in there. I'm so worried about getting this branch perfect that I'm not actually going to be able to draw Totoro. Okay, so here's our branch that he's going to be sitting on. Um, let's get our dimensions here. I want to watch how other people draw Totoro, or just draw in general, because, what happens for me is a lot of times I start on one piece and then the rest of the drawing becomes very disproportionate. So I think it'd be important to start with some shapes here. So Totoro, I never really realized this. Totoro is a circle. What do I mean Totoro is a circle? The arms, the bottom of Totoro, and the mouth and nose of Totoro. Those are all one circular shape, and there's a bit of a second circle on top. And then the split in the arms happens there. So let's start with a circle. Circles are something that I needed to work on as well when I was in school. Um, I had a teacher who I just told him I couldn't draw a circle, and he goes, "Okay, draw 1,000 circles." So I think to start here, I'm going to draw some more circles. And this is really just warming up my hand and sort of getting myself ready. I like that one there. That's a really good one. All right, there's some circles. Let's get a new layer. Just draw a circle. I think that's pretty circular. I'm pretty happy with that. So now the second circle here. Um, it's not quite the midpoint of the circle. Maybe it is the midpoint of the circle where it intersects here. But were it to be complete shape, that other end would end around where the markings on its stomach end. And the markings on its stomach end a little bit around the halfway point. So here's the halfway point of that circle. And then to sort of follow the shape of the roundness of Totoro, those markings and stripes come and follow up and around. So around here is where that second circle would end, I believe. No? Yes. I have to trust myself here because um, I'm doubting my eyes quite a bit. So again, that second circle, where does it start compared to that one? Up from here. And then that halfway point of the circle is not quite where the actual circle terminates, but the mouth here. And the mouth is halfway between the stripes and the top of the head. So if we take this to be our nose up here, the mouth would be about there, 1/3 down. And this is our second circle here. Is that right? Let's just draw it a few times. Maybe. And then that circle really follows sort of the arms. Let's add another layer here. Been drawing on the background the whole time. That's okay. Uh, that's okay. That's fine. And now I'm noticing too that circle didn't terminate at the bottom of the branch, which might be why it looks a little off. So what I'm going to do is just erase that branch, or better yet, since it's on a different layer, let's just move it. Terminates a little bit above the branch. Let's deselect again. Okay. And then, so that's where the circle ends. And again, we have this other circle here on the inside. Again, we have this other circle here on the inside. It comes down, sort of rounds out. For the ears, if I were to put a halfway point here, it'd be halfway through the halfway point on either side. So one here, one here. There's one ear. It's another ear. And it's about the same height as the round of the head as well. Some fuzz on the bottom there. Then those eyes, they come out from the side, underneath the ears. So those are shapes in our structure. Pull this in a little bit. Pull this in a little bit. And then we've got the feet here. So I'm going to split this up into, again, and then where the ears end or where the feet end. Where the ears end or where the feet end. And just sort of, there's no real reference marker for this part then. Just eyeballing it. So where those feet come down and hang. Those little paws. Those little paws, look at those. They got the little claws on them. And kind of comes up and around. It kind of comes up and around. And then the tail's hanging down in between. Okay. Now that we've got those layers set, what I'm going to do is I'm going to flatten this. I'm going to add a new layer. This is going to be our real background. Unlock view. Here's our background. And we're just going to bump the opacity down to 30 or so. And I'm going to go over these lines for the real sketch and sort of the final finish. Now we've got these shapes to start in the background, but the lines, we've got sort of these shapes to start in the background, but the lines themselves aren't these perfect, straight, clean cut forms, but sort of these undulating patches of fur. And it doesn't have like that kind of furry effect, not all the way around at least. For the outline, it's just sort of these patches. And then on the inside, we see little toothed areas like that. So I can come back in with those. And I think I'm going to bump the pixel size down even more. And we're going to go with something small as 5. We're going to go with something small as 5. I don't know why I want to start with the ears so badly. Now, one thing I'm noticing is that I might have made the head too tall, but not the ratio of the head might have been too tall, but I'm not too worried about that. The ratio of the head might have been too tall. Come back in. Really do these nice, short, sweet, confident lines. And I am using smoothing today. I noticed in the past I haven't been using it. And just to show the difference between smoothing and non-smoothing, if I tried as hard as I can to make a straight line, I just do a nice straight line like that. Unless I'm going incredibly fast, something like that, or unless I'm drawing lines incredibly fast like that, all these lines are going to have very small imperfections in them. But when you bump the smoothing to something, I prefer 30. You bump the smoothing to 30. Those imperfections are still there, depending on how you're controlling your hand and how you're controlling your stylus or your pen, pencil, paper. But they're not nearly as noticeable. So I can do these slower, more intentional lines and sort of get rid of those. But if we bump it up all the way to the extreme, you don't get any imperfections at all. It's just sort of extrapolating out. But I think I like when there's a little imperfection in it. Sometimes when you're trying to draw these details here, like the fur in between the ears, that smoothing can really mess it up. Very happy with those ears. And now with that hair coming down along the contours of the cheeks, there's a little bump there, a little divot in there. This nice long plane. Then under the eye, there's a divot that comes in. And then these sort of gentle undulations. Maybe those are too undulated. Let's come back in again, starting from the other side, sort of that rounded cheek, and comes down. I know I mentioned yesterday I have a hard time with angles, so trying to figure out what that angle should have been. It helps a lot to figure it out that it's really just circle on a circle. So I can just follow the angle of that circle, and that will give me what's close enough to what's on the drawing. A little bit more fur in there on that side, and then once you get to the halfway mark, it looks like it really smooths out. Maybe that was too much fur on there. Clips up and in like that. Okay, now for the arms. So Totoro kind of has this egg-shaped bowling pin-ness. So I'm just gonna follow that the tangent of this line here. If this circle is gonna continue, I'm just gonna follow that down to where that armpit should be. That's about this mark here, I'm gonna say. Yes, okay. Kitty cat is back today. She wants to say hello. And then these very small, gentle lines that come in like that. Is the window not open? Let me open it for you. And now here we've got a much smaller, much shorter line before the legs start to come out, which I'm sure is just one of those tiny imperfections that maybe it wasn't intentional, it's just how it came out. And you wouldn't really notice it unless you were trying to copy it exactly. And there's where that leg starts to come down and intersect. Let's try and redo that. That back. Erase some of this here. These sort of small undulations. There's where that foot comes out and in. And it's almost square. This shape comes back down and in. Like that. Well, for this leg here, we've got the line coming up and out, following out and around, a tooth, another tooth, Comes down to where the heel is, rounds out just a little bit, and then back up. And now for the little pads on the paws, sort of regular shapes that follow where the bottom of the heel should be. And these claws that stick out, um, I might just have to keep them as solid lines with the thickness that I'm at right now. Now that I'm looking at this whole section here is a bit higher than it should be. What I need to learn is how to take something that I've already drawn, and I think there's some kind of tool in Photoshop where you can just manipulate it back. Um, I've seen other artists use it on YouTube, but I just don't know what tool that is. There we go. Much happier with this. First toe, first claw. And again, that is supposed to be a lot more square. And then for this branch underneath, it doesn't really matter where and how it looks, because it's the branch. It's not Totoro. But it does frame him and give him a spot to sit. Foot kind of sects and overlaps like that. Let's go back in here for some of these details with the eyes. I'm happy with where I put them the first pass. Looks pretty close to where they are in the reference. It looks pretty close to where they are in the reference. And then right in between that nose is that wrinkle in the fur and the ruffle. And the nose here almost looks like a bear's nose or a dog's nose. Just this nice rounded shape with a tiny little divot in the middle, almost triangular. And the mouth is just this cute little thing. It's very impassive. Impassive definition. Just this very impassive, almost curious, um, and uh, guiltless look in his face. And then one thing I realized I didn't actually sketch out was the shape of the fur. So underneath that mouth is where that fur ends. And then it comes and wraps back around into those arms. So let's get started here. Tuft here. It's just these small jagged lines and tufts of fur that follow through. Try not to make it obvious that it's following that line. And then here's an interesting thing. So on this side, it's all toothed, and on this side, it's rounded. And that might be because whoever was drawing it didn't want it to be toothed, or maybe there's some reason for that. So we've got that first toothed area, and sort of these round, soft shapes as they come down and around. Let's redo that and then just see if I can fix that bottom part. And then we've got where it connects up here. That's not very happy with this side here. I'm just gonna start over here. Feels like it should start to go down a little sooner than it does. Where'd you go? There you are. There you are. And then around the bottom of the heels, where the fur kind of comes out and in again. And then we've got these patterns, which I also realized I didn't quite draw in yet. So again, they kind of follow the contour of his chest, and it looks like they're split up into a few shapes. So here's a midpoint. Let's get a similar contour. And that midpoint is where the bottom half of the shape on the top row comes along. And then if we split that in half too, so let's get a midpoint here. Split that in half. That's where the top of those shapes goes. So here's a shape. Here's a shape. Yada, yada, yada. And then let's split this one in half. Maybe almost a third. That's where the bottom of the bottom row, that's where the top of the bottom row will end. And we've got 4 patches on the bottom row and 3 on the top. So let's get a 1 line going through the top here, 1 line going through here, 1 line going through here. So here's that shape there. That's where the top of that meets it and comes down, up, in, and around. This one down, up, and around. This one here, up and down. Follows that shape very closely. And those are our top three shapes. Now these bottom three shapes, it looks like one of them starts at this midpoint. And I'm not sure if that was intentional or if that was just an easy way to draw it. So there's one. Two starts lower and underneath and kind of comes up and around and ends around the bottom there. And then three. Excuse me. Sick is coming back. Kitty, hello. We've got a much smaller shape here. It's sort of short, sweet, and compact. There we go. That's where those shapes are going to be. It's as close as I can get to an approximate. So I think for this one, I'm going to bump the smoothing up to 40 since these are so small and so smooth and organic, I guess. So something like that, but not that. There's one there. There's one there. It's pretty sharp, isn't it? There. And that should kind of lean down. For these ones again. 1, 2, 3. I think this top middle shape might be too large. This I know how to do. So I'm just going to squeeze it down. Maybe pull it in a little bit. That looks better. So let's turn off our background layer. And that is Totoro. I'm missing the whiskers. So let's get that. One. little bit thicker than the line weight. It's not that much. Same thing on this side. Oh, let's check 1, 2. Yeesh. All right, let's try that again. 1. Nope, nope. What is going on? Whoa, whoa, what the hell? 1, 2, 3. That's it. Mouth should be a little bit closer. To stomach there. I'm very, very happy with this so far, but there's some minor adjustments I gotta make here. I'll call that good. That's not too bad. And I think what I'm going to do, same thing as yesterday, I'm going to take the reference and overlay it on Totoro, see how close we got. And then I forgot the tail on underneath here. Felt like something was missing, but I couldn't put my finger on it. It's just the sort of the rounded tail, beaver tail almost underneath. That looks like Totoro. And I think maybe this arm needs to come out a little bit more. I don't really know how to stretch the shape all that well. Let's see if I can figure it out nowish. Transform, magic select. What's this? What do you call it? Frame. Not framing it. Not rotating the view. I'm just going to call that good enough for now. I'll be happy with it. And I think it might be fun to just do some cell shading underneath. So let's get another layer here. So here's our line work. Here is our sketch. Here's our color. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the line work, make a copy of it for the cell shading. I'm going to put it underneath here, and that's going to be our frame for the colors. So what I could do, I could go in and I could just eyedropper tool to figure out what color this is, but I think it would be fun to try and figure out what color this is on our own. So this is a warm gray for the upper part, borderline brown. So I'm not going to go cool with greenish, but we're going to stick towards yellow. Find a gray, desaturate it, darken it, desaturate it, darken it. That's not too far off. We're going to bump up our tolerance to 140 so that it cuts into the line work behind here. And with that extra smoothing, it is taking a little second to fill that in with the clicker tool. Fill that in again, fill that in. Keep filling it, keep filling it. That's pretty darn close. You've got this in the background here. Now that's going to get its color changed though. Let's get that filled in, that filled in, that filled in. I'll draw it with the pen instead of the paint bucket for some of these areas. And then the claws, I didn't realize we're missing some claws. Bump that back down to 5. And claw here, claw here. I think it's sort of implied that there's another claw behind. So we've got to get the angle right to hint at that better. 1, 2. 1, 2, 2, 2. Claws there. 1, 2. Claws there. And let's get back to our, I'm going to call this the color layer, even though that's the line work copy. Even though that's the line work copy. Bump this back up to 45. Now the eyes aren't actually white. It looks like they're a cool tone off-white. Maybe even a little more desaturated. Still pretty bright here. Hey, kitty kitty. Scoop. Scoopity scoop. Oh. Are you okay? No? You're not alright? What's the matter? Sorry for the other interruption there. She was back and I wanted to say hello. She was crying a little bit, so I think she maybe needs some more attention again. Get that gray in again here. And again, so I think I'm gonna fill it in with the paint bucket tool. But we got this cool off-white color. It's a yellowish color, somewhat desaturated, fairly desaturated. Close to that. Very, very close to that. A little more saturated. I think that's it. I think that's our yellow. see how close we can get it. Fine. Call it good enough. No, I won't. I'm gonna keep trying. Okay, and there we are. And now for these shadows underneath. So let's take that fur and shift it darker and more saturated. Ever so slightly more saturated. Let's see how that comes out. Just as a test, I'm going to try and draw this sort of line here. And this is not our final line. This is just to see what that shadow would look like. Shoot. Let's bump this down to 30. A little darker than that. Saturated more again. I think that's it. That's going to be our shadow. Let's go back in with this line. Let's go back in with this line. And kind of carve out these spots where the fur has some texture. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Baby. Sorry again. So again, just going in, and I'm gonna switch over to this side now. And we've got that nice smooth curve along the face. Comes pretty close to the eye. And that's when it starts to jut out a bit more. And this color kind of comes back out and in, follows this line where the other shadow is going to be. And that sort of gives this roundness to Totoro. Something like that. A little smoother there. Out a little more there. I think that the highlighted areas are a little lighter than they should be in the reference. Just an observation, not a value judgment. Technically, it is a value judgment if we're talking about what value means in art. That was a bad joke, and I kind of like it, so I'm gonna repeat it again. Uh, Louder and hope that you laugh this time. So let's get this line in here. Sort of the underside of the feet and paws. Just up and in. We've got this square sort of shape there. And that bottom part there is, so let's change the tolerance to 20. And then get this line in here so that this can all be one shape. There we go. Another shape that starts here-ish. It's going to come down, up and in and around. Let's cut that shape off from the other. Perfect. And then we've just got the simple rounded shape down here. Something like that. Now for this yellow shading. Again, we're going to go darker and more saturated. Darker and more saturated. And that gives us a color like this. Is that it? It's close enough for me to be happy with. And we're going to do the exact same thing we did. So drawing in our shade and our shadow, following that contour. I think I'm going to come in with that lighter yellow again and sort of highlight these hairy bits. Comes down and curves in. It doesn't really curve in until doesn't curve in until about 2/3 of the way. So I want to really get this dramatic change. Let's go one here, one here, one there. Just sort of trying my best to show that fur. And that almost follows the shape perfectly, but not quite. Comes up and around and back up here. Just fill those in. Let's see how they feel. They feel not too bad. And let's grab that bluish tone again for the bottoms of the feet. And the claws too. I'm not really a cell shading expert, but this feels like it's Totoro, aside from the maybe the slight color difference and that, well, we don't even have a brown for the log yet. Let's fix that right away. It's very saturated brown, kind of like that. Let's put it underneath the color layer. Just give it its own thing entirely. It might be fun to take an eraser. Where's this keep going? There we go. Might be fun to take an eraser like that, soften it. Okay, hold on. Soften it like that, bump up the size, and just sort of get this fade out effect on the log. And I'm pretty happy with that. I think I said at the beginning of this video that I was going to do multiple Totoros and compare the final Totoro to the first Totoro. But it has been, how long has it been? It has been about an hour and 15 minutes of recording. And I think if I'm going to try to work on editing, I'm going to have to change my mind on something. I'm going to have to backtrack and say that I can't do more than one, because I'm going to be spending a lot of time trying to um, learn how to edit. So I'm going to be spending a lot of time learning how to edit. So for this, I'm going to try and do at the end of each one of these videos a list of pros and cons, what I think I did right, what I think I would like to improve on. Let's give this the check mark list and the X list. So the check mark list, I was very happy with, what was I happy with? Finding the shapes underneath, finding proportions, felt like I had a decent color match. And then for things I would like to improve on, um, even though I had smoothing, the lines feel um, fuzzy is not the right word because Totoro is supposed to feel fuzzy. They feel stuttery. Some of the proportions were wrong. I have this circle on the outside here, but I don't think that I realized there's another circle on the inside here. And so, Totoro has this sort of bowling pin feeling, but this should have been wider at the base. I think you know, instead of this sort of chunky feeling, he almost feels lean in comparison to the reference image. So I'd like to figure out where that happened. It looks like the spacing of some of these lines is a little bit off too. So if Totoro has these arms hanging off the side, I mean, I'm looking at the reference image over here. This belly, the yellow of the belly takes up most of this drawing on the bottom half of it. And it does take up most of it in here, but not as much as on this one. So this arm should have been maybe smaller. This arm should have been smaller, possibly. Could have worked on that curve right there. And then maybe he should have just been wider on the bottom all around. So I kind of had this line coming down, and yeah, it follows it and it traces it. Whoops. It follows it and it traces it and it comes back down and around. But he really should have been something more like that. But, all in all, I feel very happy with how this came out. Um, I'm not one to draw characters. I haven't drawn many characters before, so this is a first for me, and for a first try, this feels you know, pretty reassuring. And then just because I'm curious, what I'm gonna do here is, like I did on the first sketch yesterday, I'm just gonna take this and I'm gonna overlay it. I'm pausing here. So, like I said, here's Totoro. I'm gonna hold Shift again to keep the proportions right. And let's just line up the top of the ears and the bottom of the tail and see if I was right in my um, assumptions. So it looks like I was right. So a little bit rounder on the bottom here. So I got that. Um, the tail's a little bit misaligned. That's okay. The branch is a little bit smaller than it should have, a little bit larger than it should have been. Um, in fact, why don't I try lining it up with the bottom of the feet and not the bottom of the tail? See if that makes it a little bit better. So here's our reference bottom of the feet. So yeah, the feet should have been a little bit larger, a little bit chunkier. Um, those lines on the stomach, they are pretty close. Some of these shapes are almost dead on, like this one here, and this one on the side is pretty close. Of course, they weren't perfect. It's hard to get irregular shapes like that. Um, it's hard to get irregular shapes like that. But for day three, I mean, I'm really happy with myself. Um, this has been something that I've wanted to do for a long time. And again, I think this first couple weeks we're just establishing a baseline of where I'm at right now. And if I put in some more time and thought and effort into some future videos, I should be able to practice different skill sets and be happy with how it does come out too. And before I go, I'm just going to fix this one thing that's bugging me, which is these feet. That color is a much lighter blue than it should be. It should be a similar value to the balls of the feet underneath, or just to the feet underneath. So if I were to change this to grayscale, this color over here and this color over here should be the exact same. And that looks a lot better. It still kind of pops out a little bit, but not as much. It's just the same as on that. So that's day 3. We've got a Totoro. And I'm very happy with how this came out. And thank you again for coming along with me. I know these videos tend to be on the long side, so I'm gonna try and cut them down to just the meat and potatoes. And I think I'm gonna go for a goal of, after editing the video, 40 minutes max is what these should be for now. And then once I, kind of get into my rhythm, learn what I do like and I don't like, uh, as far as videos go, but I do and don't like doing in videos. I'll get into a groove and find what works for me and what doesn't work for me, and um, as the art improves, I'm hoping that these videos improve too. And maybe it'll go from raw footage that I'm just uploading to YouTube with a couple of tweaks in it to a more finished video where I have such a hard time talking. I don't really talk very much. Like I don't when I'm at work I trail off and I don't have full sentences and I I guess I just haven't talked very much before. So this is kind of new for me. And I think that these videos are good practice for me. Trying to translate my thoughts in my head into words. Because sometimes it feels like you know, I'm trying to take ramen and turn it into SpaghettiOs, if that makes sense. No, no, I'm trying to take ramen and turn it into alphabet soup. I've got these little stringy noodles, and they're supposed to make words and shapes and letters, but right now it's just a curly mess that's kind of all over the place. And everything's still there. The substance is still there. You got the flavor, you got the texture, you got the chewiness in the noodle, you got the broth. It's all the same thing. Um, but it's like it's just made weird. Yeah, I probably should edit these videos, but a part of me is kind of fascinated by the idea of just letting myself ramble on and you know a look inside the human condition. I don't know if that makes sense. um, and this has been very therapeutic for me, I think. Um, thank you again for tagging along, and you know, I don't know if anyone's really gonna watch these, but I appreciate you stopping in and tagging along with me. And if you're in a similar situation as me, then I hope you know hope you know there are other people going through the same thing, and that, any fear that you have of embarrassing yourself, or a fear, this weird illogical fear of humiliation or um shame, there's nothing to be ashamed of, if you put the effort in, and as long as you start and you have more than you did at the start of the day, at the end of the day, that's nothing to be ashamed of, you know. Is this drawing perfect? No, no, it's not. There's, I mean, I can, maybe this is a me problem. I'm not trying, I'm not even trying to. I just see everything that's wrong with it. But, you know, I wanna take some time for myself to appreciate what I got right too. Um, so yeah, thanks again for tagging along. I'm gonna see what I can do about editing this video, and maybe I'll keep the mushy stuff in, maybe I'll get rid of it. Um, but thanks again. And we're gonna stop it here.